Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us here today. Thank you for your Sabbath. Thank you for your word. Thank you for encouragement, for leading us on a narrow path, helping us to be more like you each day. Lord, the more we get to know you, the more we realise your mercy and your compassion. And it's an amazing thing. It seems so far away sometimes. It's such an amazing thing, Lord, to know you and to have you in our lives. Lord, I pray that you'd bless everybody here, bless everybody listening online. Bless JP and his teaching today. That would help us to understand you more. Praise your holy name. Amen.
Okay then, so this is the Torah portion where they crossed the Red Sea. Torah portion, Beshalach. And when I came to it, I had a load of thoughts about, what I might talk about in the Torah portion. But it took a weird turn. I started looking into songs, because the Song of Moses is into it. And I started looking at the words used in the Hebrew and in the Greek about songs, and then started following a trail through the scriptures. And the last thing that I would have ever expected that I'd end up talking about is singing to Yehovah. That's just not something that I thought I'd ever be teaching on. But it started there, and then it all kind of unfolded from there. And in the end, I had the Torah portion, and I felt like I'd not really put it together. I felt like it was something that Yehovah kind of put blocks down. So when that sort of thing happens, I always think, this will probably be useful for somebody in particular. But what I'm going to talk about, just kind of as an overarching theme, is exalting Yehovah and what it is to exalt him. We can kind of understand that following the Torah is a way that we could exalt Yehovah and various other little things, but the actual idea of how he's exalted in the scriptures and how we should exalt him and how we should speak of him, and the tendency that we have when we speak of him to kind of paint him in a particular light that we think will be more palatable to others, and all sorts of different things all started to crystallize and come together. Well, we'll start in Exodus 13, verse 17. It says, "It came to be when Pharaoh had let the people go that Elohim did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, though that was nearer. For Elohim said, lest the people regret when they see fighting and return to Mitzrayim." Okay, so when I've went through it last year, I liken this to the people that Yeshua speaks of in the parable of the sower. When he speaks to the people who are sown on rocky ground, he says they are those who, when they hear the word, immediately receive it with joy, and they have no root in themselves but are short-lived. Then when pressure or persecution arises because of the word, immediately they stumble. Okay, but Yehovah knows that these people are like this. And I said last year that the reason that he's doing all of this is for Joshua and for Caleb. Okay, he's taking all of these people out so that those people end up in the promised land. But there's another consideration in this as well, because he knows this is how they're going to react. They've just come out of Egypt, and he knows that if they were to be tested like this, they would fail. So the other part of this to consider is no trial is overtaken you except such as is common to man, and Elohim is trustworthy, who shall not allow you to be tried beyond what you are able. So he knows that these people are not able to pass this particular test at this particular point. And we know what's going to happen from here. We know that these people are no good anyway, and they're not going to pass any of the tests. But this is a consideration in this as well. Verse 18 says, "So Elohim led the people around by the way of the wilderness of the Sea of Reeds. And the children of Israel went up armed from the land of Mitzrayim. And Moshe took the bones of Yosef with him, for he certainly made the children of Israel swear, saying, Elohim shall certainly visit you, and you shall bring my bones from here with you. And I think we've kind of got a bit of an inaccurate view of what it was like for them to be in slavery in Egypt. When they left, they went out armed. I don't think that they were quite as heavily oppressed as we think that they were. Their lives were probably a little bit freer than we have the conception in our minds. Verse 21 says, And Yehovah went before them by day in a column of cloud to lead the way, and by night in a column of fire to give them light, so as to go by day and by night. The column of cloud did not cease by day, nor the column of fire by night before the people. So we can obviously see in this is how Yehovah leads us in our lives. And again, I think that when I've spoken of the idea that you shouldn't pray to Yehovah to ask him what to do, you should pray to him to ask you to lead you. I think that it's something that people have difficulty reckoning with. Not necessarily anyone that's here, but I've had conversations, and it seems that people, I don't know, they still look to things in their life like, why did this one event happen? Why is this happening? And like I've said before, things don't happen. Everything doesn't happen for a reason. Some things are just the events in our life. Yehovah hasn't created every event so that we can reverse engineer it and look at it and say, why did this one event happen? What did Yehovah create this one event in my life for? And this makes me think of it. Okay, but Yehovah does lead us. And we should pray to him to guide us, and we should pray to him to lead us. But the overarching thing that he's given us is his word, and his word equips us for all of those situations. So when those things happen, rather than saying, what is Yehovah doing in this one particular situation, we should say, how has he equipped us to deal with this situation through his word? Verse 1 of chapter 14 says, And Yehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel that they turn and camp before Pihahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, opposite Baal Zephon. Camp before it by the sea. For Pharaoh shall say of the children of Israel, They are entangled in the land, the wilderness has closed them in. And I shall strengthen the heart of Pharaoh, and he shall pursue them. But I am to be esteemed through Pharaoh and over all his army, and the Mitzrites shall know that I am Yehovah. So as we saw a couple of weeks ago, Pharaoh, when he sees that the situation changes, he starts to be emboldened, and Yehovah strengthens him in the heaviness of heart that he has, in the hard heart that he has. Yehovah says, I will strengthen the heart of Pharaoh, and he shall pursue them. He says, but I am to be, and it's the same word there for when Pharaoh's heart is made dull or unresponsive, heavy. The word is kavad. Now, these are some of the words that I want to look at as we go through this, because I want to look at what it is to exalt Yehovah. And one of the words that we see is this word kavad. And I'll cover it in a bit more detail in a couple of minutes. But it's basically to make something heavy. It's got this sense of making something weighty, something significant. So the idea of it being heavy, when Pharaoh's heart is kavad, it becomes heavy as in dull. But this is the sort of meaning that it carries. Okay, so one of the words that I want to look at today is room. Okay, see what this is on. Okay, room. Room is a verb, and essentially what it means is to lift something up, to raise something up, by implication for something to be exalted. We can understand that in English. We can say something has been lifted up, and we could understand that to mean that it's been exalted. But as I've said before, the best way to understand words often is to look at how they're used in the scriptures. Genesis 7:17 says, "And the flood was on the earth 40 days, and the waters increased, lifted up the ark." Okay, so we can understand. They didn't exalt the ark, they lifted the ark physically up in the air. But Avram said to the king of Sodom, "I have lifted up my hand to Yehovah." I've roomed my hand to Yehovah. Came to be when he heard, this is Potiphar's wife relating this, that I lifted up my voice and cried out. Okay, so you can lift up your voice when you're crying out. We'll also see the idea of lifting up your voice, which is a different word, nasa. This is the word when we lift up our heads, or we have our heads lifted up. It's more, carries the connotation of being accepted. Here though, I lifted up my voice, I roomed my voice, I exalted my voice almost. Numbers 15 verse 19, "Then it shall be, when you eat of the bread of the land, that you present a contribution to Yehovah." And we looked at this when we went through the book of Leviticus. Okay, we know what the heave offering is. We're familiar with the words wave offering or heave offering, but it actually comes from this word. It comes from room. So a wave offering, an offering that is lifted up, is a terumah. Okay, and it says when you present, in the English, that's the way that it's been approximated, but actually it's when you lift up, a lifting up offering. Okay. Deuteronomy 8 verse 14 says that your heart then becomes lifted up. Okay, and you forget Yehovah Elohim, your heart becomes exalted. And what we're going to see is that these things can be done to incorrect understandings. They can be done to the understanding that Yehovah teaches us of his word. They can be done to us, or they can be done to Yehovah. So your heart becomes room. Psalm 34 verse 3 says, "O Yehovah, make great with me, magnify with me, make Gadol or Gadalah, and let us exalt his name together." Okay, so now we can see it in the context in which we'll appreciate it in this Torah portion. Let us lift up his name together. And this is what Yehovah is looking for in people. He wants people who lift up what is good. He doesn't want people who lift up what is false. Okay, the people that he wants his kingdom to comprise of are those who recognize what is tov, those who fear his word, they appreciate his word, they love his word, and they lift it up, they exalt what is good rather than what is false. Okay, so this is another word. Okay, it looks like kalal. It's not, it's salal. This first letter, reading right to left, is a samek. You get two S sounds in Hebrew. You get a sheen, you get a samek, and they both make what we would think of as an S sound. So this is to salal something. And this also means to lift up, to cast something up, to exalt, to esteem, to highly prize. Okay, so Exodus 9:17, we see that Pharaoh does this to himself. You still salal yourself against my people. Jeremiah 18:12-15 says, "But they shall say, it is no use, for we walk according to our own plans, and we do each one the stubbornness of his evil heart." So what I was talking about a couple of weeks ago, and in this idea of we walk out what seems good to us, these people are walking out their own plans, but this is seen as a bad thing. The reason is because they do after the stubbornness of their evil hearts. When we make our own plans, we make them according to the word. So as long as we're doing it according to what the word says is good, we can make our own plans. These people are different. Therefore, thus said Yehovah, ask now among the nations, who has heard the like of this? The maiden of Yisrael has done what is most horrible. Does the snow of Lebanon cease from the rock of the field, or the cool flowing waters from afar dry up? But my people have forgotten me. They've burned incense to what is false. They've stumbled from their ways, from the ancient paths, to walk in bypaths and a way that is not lifted up, a way that is not exalted. They lift this way up, but it is not a good thing. Okay, so they want to lift up what is false. Psalm 68 verse 4 says, sing to Elohim, sing praises to his name. Salal him who rides through the deserts by his name Yah, and exalt before him. Exalt's a word that's kind of like exalt, but they mean different things. To exult in something is to rejoice in it. This word salal could well be translated here, exalt him who rides through the deserts. Salal him though. And this is the word kavod that we saw before. And to kavod something is to be heavy, to be weighty, be grievous, be hard. Okay, it carries this idea though of making something weighty. Okay, we know what people do with Yehovah's word when they despise it. We know what that word means. It means they lightly esteem it. Okay, to kavod something though is to make it heavy, make it important, make it be of consequence. Okay, so we are to kavod Yehovah. But it carries this idea of esteem, to esteem something. The other word is kavod. Okay, so kavod is the verb. That's what you do. You make something heavy. You make something esteemed or weighty or of consequence. Kavod is the noun that comes from that. So the state is being heavy, or, as you can see here, glory or honor. To be esteemed, to be glorified. Okay, that's what it is to be kavod. Genesis 3 verse 2 says, and Avram was very rich in livestock, in silver and in gold. And again, this is just an English approximation of what the word's saying. Actually, what the Hebrew says carries much deeper meaning. Avram was very weighty. He was very esteemed. He was very honored. Okay, this was his position with Yehovah. So he was, by interpretation, rich, but that's not what it's saying. Okay, it's saying he was weighty, he was of consequence. Exodus 8 verse 15 says, and when Pharaoh saw that there was relief, he hardened his heart. He made it heavy, he made it dull, he made it unresponsive. So that meaning of it being heavy or weighty. He also exalted his heart. Okay, he made it esteemed in his eyes. Okay, the evil is what he was lifting up, what he was esteeming. We saw that he salaled himself and he hardened his heart. Exodus 20 verse 12 says, respect or honor your father and your mother. And Charlie will be going through this next week. But this is this word again. It's to make them of consequence, to make them weighty in your life, to give them esteem, okay, to honor them. Not that you have to do everything that they tell you to do, but you make them of consequence, you make them important, and you make them weighty. Numbers 22, 16 to 17. They came to Bilam and said to him, this is what Balak son of Zippor said, do not be withheld from coming to me, please. So this is Balaam. For I esteem you very greatly, is what the English says. The English approximation, esteem you very greatly. But in the Hebrew it says kavod, kavod. And we know when words are used in multiples, it adds to the weight of the word. Okay, so it's not just I esteem you, I make you weighty. It's I make you incredibly weighty. Kavod, kavod. Psalm 22, 22 to 23 says, I make known your name to my brothers. In the midst of the assembly, I praise you. Okay, and this word's halal. Okay, we're going to look at praising and exalting him in the second part. This is from where we get hallelujah. Okay, to praise Yah is this word, halal Yah. And you who fear Yehovah, praise him. All you seed of Yaakov, esteem him, make him weighty. Okay, in your praises of him, make him weighty. Recognize who he is and fear him, all you seed of Israel. Psalm 29, 1 to 2 says, ascribe to Yehovah, O you sons of the mighty, ascribe to Yehovah esteem and strength. So this is the noun version of it. not making him weighty. Ascribe to him this state of being weighty, being of consequence, this state of, as we often see it translated, glory. Ascribe to Yehovah glory and strength. I don't really like those words. I don't like the words grace and faith and glory and those sort of things, because they all seem a bit woolly, like Christianisms, where nobody really understands what the word's actually saying. Okay, esteem, it's okay. I think it's better than glory. He's being esteemed, though. Ascribe to him weight and esteem. Ascribe to Yehovah the esteem of his name. Bow yourselves to Yehovah in the beauty of holiness or set apartness. Psalm 50, 14-17 says, offer thanksgiving to Elohim. Pay your vows to the Most High. Call upon me in the day of distress. Let me rescue you, and you esteem me. Okay, you make me weighty. So you can see in all of these verses, these things are all to do with what it is to exalt Yehovah, to make him weighty, to lift him up above the world. Okay, to make him set apart from the world, to lift him up and make him weighty and of consequence. But to the wrong, Elohim says, what right have you to recite my laws or take my covenant in your mouth, while you hated instruction and cast my words behind you? Okay, so the ones who are following his word, they esteem him, they make him of weight. To the others, he says, what right have you to recite them? Okay, you do not lift them up, you do not esteem them, you hate them, you despise them, you lightly esteem them, and you cast them behind you. So you've got no right to even be talking about these things, because you do not give them the correct weight, you do not give them the correct consequence in your life. Proverbs 4, 1-8. Okay, we'll see all these words used together. It says, children, listen to the discipline of a father and give attention to know understanding. For I gave you good doctrine. Do not forsake my Torah. For I was my father's son, tender, and the only one in the eyes of my mother. Then he taught me and said to me, let your heart hold fast my words. Cherish my commands and live. Okay, so to cherish something, again, is to give weight and give importance to it, to recognize it for what it is. Acquire wisdom, acquire understanding. Do not forget and do not turn away from the words of my mouth. Do not leave her and let her guard you. Love her and let her watch over you. Okay, so wisdom is always anthropomorphized as a woman. It's given human characteristics, and here it's spoken of, as she is throughout Scripture, as a her. Okay, do not leave her. Let her guard you. Love her and let her watch over you. Lift her up, esteem her, and it will do you good. The beginning of wisdom is acquire wisdom, and with all you're acquiring, acquire understanding. Exalt her, lift her up, and let her room you. Let her lift you up. She brings you esteem. She makes you weighty and of consequence when you embrace her. Okay, so we do this to Yehovah. We esteem him, and in turn, it has this effect on us also. This is what Paul's talking about in 2 Thessalonians when he says, to this end, we always pray for you that our Elohim would count you worthy of this calling and complete all the good pleasure of goodness and the work of belief with power, so that the name of our Master Yeshua Messiah is esteemed in you, so that it is given weight and consequence in you, and you in him. Okay, so if you're in him, you're doing all of these things. So we give him esteem, okay, so that men will see your good works and they'll esteem your Father who is in heaven. We also will have this weightiness added to us. Okay, it has good effects in our lives. We are esteemed and we are lifted up by lifting up and exalting Yehovah. Verse 5 says, it was reported to the king of Mitzrayim that the people had fled, and the heart of Pharaoh and his servants was turned against the people. And they said, why have we done this, that we have let Yisrael go from serving us? Okay, so it took the death of the firstborn for them to even get to the point where they were like, okay, yeah, just go. Because Yehovah kept strengthening Pharaoh and strengthening his people's heart in their wickedness. Okay, and I spoke a couple of weeks ago about what does this say about people who do what Yehovah says to do because they're scared of the consequences in their life. Not because they salal him, not because they room him, they lift him up, not because they've given him any kind of weight, but out of pure fear. Okay, and that's not the fear of Yehovah that comes with lifting him up and exalting him and all of the other things. But they just do it out of fear. And I've had numerous people say to me, yeah, I'm going to start doing that because this thing's going wrong in my life, or, I'm scared that if I don't do this, then something will go wrong. And it's this actually being scared of the consequences rather than because you've recognized what it is and you lift it up and you give it esteem. Pharaoh, he let them all go because I imagine he was getting scared. By the end of those plagues, he keeps coming to the point where he changes his mind, and then Yehovah strengthens him in his hardness. So what does it say about those people who do things out of fear and they begin to do those things? What does it say to them if Yehovah was to strengthen them in their wickedness? Okay, we'd see people doing things like this. The reason that Yehovah is doing this, he's strengthening him in his hardness of heart, is for a reason for him to be exalted. And we're going to see that. He's risen him up so that he can show his power in him. So he made his chariot ready and he took his people with him. He took 600 choice chariots and all the chariots of Mitzrayim with officers over all of them. And Yehovah hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Mitzrayim, and he pursued the children of Israel. But the children of Israel went out defiantly. And it's the same word, room. Hey, they went out with a high hand. They went out with their hands lifted up. They went out lifted up. Okay? See this word in Numbers 15 as well. For him who does whatever by mistake, there is one Torah, both for him who is native among the children of Israel and for the stranger who sojourns in their midst. But the soul who does whatever lifted up with a high hand, whether he is native or a stranger, he reviles Yehovah, and that soul shall be cut off from among his people, because he's despised the word of Yehovah and broken his command. Okay, so whoever does whatever with their hand lifted up, okay, he has despised the word of Yehovah. So what's he doing? He's lifting up himself. He is exalting himself. Okay, he's lightly esteemed the word of Yehovah to esteem something else, to esteem what is false. He's broken his command, so he's shown he gives no weight to Yehovah, and instead he gives weight to himself. Verse 9 says, and the Mitzrites pursued them, and all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army overtook them, camping by the sea besides Bahachirath before Baal-Zephon. I read this and I thought, that's not right. They didn't overtake them camped by the sea, did they? Okay, they never got to where they were camping and destroyed the camp or anything else. They never actually reached where they were. So I thought, that's weird. I looked it up in the Septuagint to see what that says. The Septuagint says that they found them camping by the sea. It's a completely different word. It can't be that they overtook them, because when the Masoretic text says overtook in other places, the Septuagint uses a word that means they were overtaken there. Lavan overtook Yaakov when he was pursuing him. Okay, Yosef, when he sends his steward, his servants out, arise and pursue after the man, and thou shalt overtake them. And it's a different word. And all the way through, where the Masoretic text uses the word that it uses here for they overtook them by the sea, anywhere else it uses that word. The Septuagint uses a word which means to overtake. But in that one instance, when it says that they overtook them where they were camped, it says they found them where they were camped. And that makes a lot more sense. So the Mitzrites pursued them and all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them, or found them rather, camping by the sea beside Pihahiroth, before Baal-Zephon. And when Pharaoh drew near, the children of Israel lifted their eyes and saw the Mitzrites coming up after them. Okay, so when they were drawing near, they didn't ever overtake them, they found them. And they were greatly afraid, so the children of Israel cried out to Yehovah. And they said to Moshe, did you take us away to die in the wilderness because there are no graves in Mitzrayim? So they're being sarcastic with him. Did we have to come here to die, Moses? This is great, isn't it? What is this that you've done to us to bring us up out of Mitzrayim? Is this not the word that we spoke to you in Mitzrayim, saying, leave us alone and let us serve the Mitzrites? For it would have been better for us to serve the Mitzrites than to die in the wilderness. Okay, so we're seeing another glimpse of how these people are. We know how they turn out. We know that they're always harking after Egypt. They want to go back there. But this is often the way that people will react when they come out into following the truth of the word. They get so far with what they want, and then they'll come across something that they don't want to do. And so they say it would be better for us to go back to Egypt. So again, these people are demonstrating these characteristics of the people who, when they hear the word, they immediately receive it with joy, but they have no root in themselves and they're short-lived. And it doesn't last. When persecution arises because of the word, immediately they stumble. They see the armies coming after them, the persecution, so to speak, coming after them, and they say, we should have gone back to Egypt. The people of faith were actually very different to this. It says, in belief all these died, not having received the promises, but seeing them from a distance, welcomed and embraced them, and confessed that they were aliens and strangers on the earth. Okay, they could see what they were heading for. They didn't look back to what they'd left. For those who speak this way, make it clear that they seek a fatherland. And yet, if they had indeed kept remembering that place from which they had come out, they would have had the chance to return. Okay, so just like these people, it would be better for us to go back to Egypt. But people of faith, they see what's coming. We're going to have struggles. We're going to come to things and we're going to be like, oh, I either don't want to do that or do want to do that, whatever form it takes. And you struggle with Elohim and you say, no, I'm going to do what the word says. If Yehovah says it, that's right. And we're looking for the promise. Okay, we're looking for the inheritance. That's what people of faith do. These people, they kept remembering the place that they come from. But now they long for a better place that is a heavenly. Therefore, Elohim is not ashamed to be called their Elohim. And we see with these people that Elohim indeed does seem to be ashamed to be called their Elohim. And he keeps saying things to Moses like, get out the way, I'm going to destroy all of these people. And Moshe said to the people, do not be afraid. Stand still and see the deliverance or the salvation of Yehovah, which he has done for you today. For the Mitzrites whom you see today, you are never to see again. Yehovah does fight for you, and you keep still. And this is a theme that we see throughout Scripture of how Yehovah is exalted. The sort of things that we're to speak of Yehovah are things like this, and him defeating the enemy. We'll go on to see that. Yehovah said to Moshe, why do you cry to me? Speak to the children of Israel and let them go forward. And you lift up your rod. Stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. And the children of Israel go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. And I am hardening the hearts of the Mitzrites, strengthening them. And they shall follow them. And I am to be esteemed through Pharaoh and over all his army, his chariots and his horsemen. So I am to be made weighty. This is what's happening here. I'm going to be lifted up. I'm going to be exalted, and I'm going to be made of consequence. I'm going to show my power in this person. The Mitzrites shall know that I am Yehovah when I am esteemed, when I'm glorified, when I'm made weighty and of consequence through Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. And this idea that the Mitzrites shall know that I am Yehovah, this is something that we see throughout the scriptures, that the peoples, the nations are going to know that he is Yehovah when he is esteemed, when he's made heavy in their eyes. The angel of Yehovah, who went before the camp of Israel, moved and went behind them, and the column of cloud went from before them and stood behind them. So they were never overtaken by these people. Okay, they're still pursuing them. The camp came between the camp of the Mitzrites and the camp of Israel, and it was the cloud and the darkness, and it gave light by night, and the one did not come near the other all the night. So we know that this is the reason that Pharaoh was raised up, in order for Yehovah to show his power in him. We know that this is in fact why he raises up all people who are of a hard heart. And it's funny because Yehovah is going to be esteemed by everyone. Either, like Pharaoh, he's going to be made weighty and of consequence when his power is shown in those people. His patience is seen, that he patiently bore with the vessels of wrath that were created for destruction. Okay? And ultimately, he will show his power in those people, and he will be esteemed through them. But the amazing thing is that he gives us the opportunity to give him esteem by walking out his ways, and then we're esteemed in those things also. So 2 Kings 19:32-35 shows us another example with another ruler. It says, "Therefore thus said Yehovah concerning the king of Ashur, he does not come into this city, nor does he shoot an arrow there, nor does he come before it with shield, nor does he build a siege mound against it. By the way that he came, by the same he turns back, and he does not come into this city, declares Yehovah, and I shall defend this city to save it for my own sake and for the sake of David my servant. And it came to be in that night that the angel of Yehovah went out and smote in the camp of Ashur 185,000, and they rose up early in the morning and saw all of them dead bodies." So we see the same thing here with the angel of Yehovah protecting Yehovah's people, and Yehovah being esteemed in the eyes of the particular nation. Isaiah 41:8-13 says, "But you, Yisrael, are my friend, are my servant Yaakov, whom I have chosen, the descendants of Abraham, my friend, whom I have taken from the ends of the earth and called from its farthest parts, and said to you, you are my servant. I have chosen you and have not rejected you. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not look around, for I am your Elohim. I shall strengthen you. I shall also help you. I shall also uphold you with the right hand of my righteousness. See, all those who raged against you are ashamed and blush. They are as non-existent, and the men who strive with you perish." These people are going to be destroyed, but Yehovah is going to be esteemed through seeing his patience with the vessels of wrath prepared for destruction. "You seek them, but you do not find them, those who struggle with you. Those who fight you are as non-existent as naught. For I, Yehovah your Elohim, am holding your right hand, saying to you, do not fear, I shall help you." So this event's going to be very similar. Okay, when he gathered his people together out of Egypt, the future is going to be a time when he gathers us together, and our enemies are going to be shown to be nothing, and his power is going to be seen through them. Ezekiel 38:18-23 says, "And it shall be on that day, on the day when Gog comes against the land of Israel, declares the Master Yehovah, that my wrath shall come up in my face." Okay, English approximation. His anger is like his nose being hot. Okay, his wrath is like him having a hot nose. So what this is kind of saying is that his hot nose will come up in his face. "For in my jealousy and in the fire of my wrath I have spoken. On that day there shall be a great shaking in the land of Israel, so that the fish of the sea and the birds of the heavens and the beasts of the field and all creeping creatures that creep on the earth and all men who are on the face of the earth shall shake at my presence, and the mountains shall be thrown down, and the steep places shall fall, and every wall fall to the ground." See, when Yehovah speaks of himself, he speaks and he's entirely unashamed. He speaks of his great works on the earth. He speaks and he says, through these things I am esteemed. Through these things I am exalted. And as we're going to see when we get into the third part, these are the ways that we need to speak of him as well, and that we need to be unashamed when we speak of him. And that in fact, speaking of him in those ways holds great power. And I shall call for a sword against Gog on all my mountains, declares the Master Yahovah, the sword of each one soul against this brother. And I shall judge him with pestilence and blood, and rain down flooding rain and hailstones, fire and sulfur on him and on his bands and on the many peoples who are with him. And I shall magnify myself, I shall make myself great, set myself apart, and I shall be known in the eyes of many nations, and they shall know that I am Yahovah. So this is the way that he's known to these people. Okay, they're stubborn and they're not going to listen to him, and they're hard-hearted. But his esteem, his weight is shown in these people. Isaiah 52:13-15, speaking of Yeshua, says, "See, my servant shall work wisely. He is high and has been lifted up, and he has been very high. As many were astonished at you, so marred from man his appearance, and his form from the sons of men. He does likewise sprinkle many nations," talking of the cleansing of the conscience, cleansing of the spirit. "Concerning him, kings shut their mouths, for that which had not been recounted to them they have seen, and what they had not heard they understood." Okay, so when they see him, they will understand him. Many people, in fact, have heard of Yeshua, and they've heard kind of a wishy-washy version of him, and they don't understand who he actually is. But one day these people will understand who he is. They'll see what they have not previously understood. Moshe stretched out his hand over the sea, and Yahovah caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea into dry land, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, and the waters were a wall to them on their right and on their left. And this phrasing that he made the sea into dry land, we can kind of understand, he split the sea and they walked through on the dry land. Kind of see, he made the sea into dry land. Okay, but last year I went through something, I think for me it's one of the most amazing prophecies in all of the scriptures. It's a prophecy about when we enter into Mount Zion, okay, when the dead in Messiah are raised in Sheol. So I would recommend people to go and watch this, because I'm not going to go through it all again, but these passages are heavy with these allusions to us entering into Mount Zion in the end. The Mitzrites pursued and went after them into the midst of the sea, all the horses of Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. And it came to be in the morning watch that Yahovah looked down on the army of the Mitzrites through the column of fire and cloud, and he brought the army of the Mitzrites into confusion. He took off their chariot wheels so that they drove them with difficulty. And the Mitzrites said, "Let us flee from the face of Israel, for Yahovah fights for them against the Mitzrites." Okay, and this is final thing that I'm going to look at. This is how Yahovah is exalted, and this is one of the ways that we should speak of Yahovah and how we should relate him to other people. Okay, here he throws the Mitzrites into confusion, the Egyptians into confusion. Yahovah fights for them, and he causes disarray. And we see that this is what he does. When he wants to protect his people, when there's something coming against his people, he does this exact same sort of thing. Judges 7:22 says, 300 blew the shofarot, okay, the shofars. Yahovah set the sword of each one against the other all throughout the camp. Isaiah 19, I shall stir up Egyptians against Egyptians, and they shall fight, each one against his brother, each one against his neighbor, city against city, kingdom against kingdom. 1 Samuel 14, Shaul was called, and all the people who were with him, and they went to the battle, and see, every man's sword was against his neighbor, a very great confusion, exactly the same as we see here with the Egyptians. Then the children of Ammon and Moab stood up against the inhabitants of Mount Seir. So the Ammonites and the Moabites stand up against Edom to destroy and annihilate them. Okay, so two of Israel's enemies. When they've made an end of the inhabitants of Seir, so when they destroyed the Edomites, they helped to destroy one another. Haggai 2 verse 22 says, "And I shall overturn the throne of the kingdoms, and I shall destroy the might of the kingdom of the nations, and overturn the chariots and the riders, and the horses and their riders shall come down, each by the sword of his brother." So there's some kind of great army that comes against us in the future, comes against people in the future. When it comes to the time of the end, I have no doubt that Yehovah is going to do exactly the same again. It's like when they went into the land and they were faced with the giants, okay, and they all freaked out, and Yehovah said that it was a lack of faith, and he made them wander in the wilderness 40 years. Okay, this is what he told them. He says, "I shall send my fear before you and cause confusion." Exactly the same as happened with the Egyptians. "Among all the people to whom you come, and make all your enemies turn their backs to you. And I shall send hornets before you, which shall drive out the Hivite and the Canaanite and the Hittite from before you." Okay, so he had made this promise to them. He said, "This is what I'm going to do. All these people that you go and you see the giants, and you're afraid of them." Okay, he's already made a promise that he will help you to overcome them. And the same is true for us. And sometimes we don't see things quite that clearly in our lives. We come against something and we think, "I don't know how I'm going to overcome this." And we've got the choice: are we going to be like Jacob, who receives the name Israel because he struggled without Elohim and he overcame through the promises of Elohim? Or are we going to be like Esau? Psalm 76, I want to finish on this. I've got several psalms that are throughout this Torah portion, psalms which exalt Yehovah, because as we go through, I hope that you'll get a clearer picture of what it is to exalt him and how we are to speak of him, the sort of things that we are to tell other people about who he is. It says, "In Yehudah Elohim is known. His name is great in Yisrael. His tabernacle is in Shalem, and his dwelling place in Sion. There he broke the arrows of the bow, the shield and the sword and the battle axe, Selah. You are resplendent, more excellent than mountains of prey. The stout-hearted have been stripped. They slept their sleep, and none of the mighty men have found their hands. At your rebuke, O Elohim of Yaakov, both the rider and the horse lay stunned. You are to be feared, and who would stand in your presence when you are displeased? From heaven you shall cause judgment to be heard. The earth shall fear and shall be still. When Elohim arises to justice, to save all the meek of the earth, Selah. For the wrath of mankind praises you, and with the remainder of wrath you guard yourself." So just like he's saying, I'm going to be exalted when you see that I have patience with the vessels of wrath prepared for destruction, and all of those things exalt me. This is what's being spoken of here. The wrath of mankind praises him, brings esteem to him, lifts him up. Make vows to Yehovah your Elohim and pay them. Let all who are around him bring presents to the one to be feared. He cuts off the spirit of leaders. He is awesome to the kings of the earth. Okay, and as we go through, you're going to see more of these sorts of things that are spoken of him. And often in these things, it seems a little bit weird at first. Okay, the things that are spoken of, things like make vows to Yehovah your Elohim, pay them, let all who are around him bring presents to the one to be feared. And part of speaking of Yehovah and part of exalting him is to speak of these things that maybe the people around us would think of as a little bit weird. What, bring presents to Yehovah? That sounds a bit weird, or whatever else. And you'll see these things come up time and again as we go through this. When we come back in the second part, we'll look at singing songs to him, to exalt him, and we'll get a clearer idea of what this is.